Hi, everyone. So, with the holidays having passed, Dr. Rand Paul released his Festivus report, which actually came out before Christmas, but it's time for us to talk about it now. See, Dr. Rand Paul is a senator from Kentucky. He ran on the GOP ticket, but he's not really a Republican the way people think of Republicans. He's described himself a number of ways, but much like his father Ron Paul, Rand Paul is a libertarian. Of course, the Libertarian Party can't get much traction, so when you're forced to work within a duopoly, you work with the party that'll work with you. We have seen Rand Paul push back on the GOP multiple times for various reasons on various projects, so when I say that he's a Republican by default, that's about all you can work with. When you're stuck with a duopoly, you kind of go with whichever one you can work with. And I'm going to get into the duopoly and the Republicrats in a future video and a future podcast because I think there's a lot to parse there. A lot of the corruption that can be attributed to our system is entirely because of the duopoly and the fact that we have essentially a single party parsed into two dynamic groups, so it looks like we have an illusion of choice. But that's going to be a longer discussion that might actually be broken up into several episodes because, oh boy, is there a lot to break down there, especially in recent days. And with the obvious actions by the establishment to go back to the way things are supposed to be after a rather tumultuous 4 years under President Trump, I think that's something that we really need to parse and really take an honest look at to really understand what's going on in our political system. But we're not going to do that today. Today, we are going to talk about what the aristocracy thinks of you and your tax dollars. That's right. And Rand Paul released this report a few days before Christmas. He also the Festivus report, which I think is very appropriate, because the Festivus season is really the time between solstice and Christmas, and it's got a number of names. You got Festivus, Saturnalia, Yule, and whatever you practice, whatever holiday you celebrate, whether it's whatever winter holiday it is. The point is that he releases the report to see what kind of bullshit our government's been spending our money on. And I think it's really important we go into some of this today. Now, you can download his Festivus report off of his Senate page. You can also find the link to it off of his Twitter. If I remember to, I will try to make sure to link it in the description below. I've only read like the first 5 pages, and it made me angry, as it will you. And so I'm going to go through the highlights of the list of bullshit that our government has spent money on. And maybe I'll go through the whole list. I don't know. But I've got roughly an hour produced. And I've got things that I want to talk about just on the items that I selected out of it. And it's only maybe 10% of the bullshit of the $54 billion of waste that he goes through. And he touches briefly on another amount of waste that is far more, roughly $387 billion. And that is the payments on government debt. That's right. That's not the principal. That's the interest. That's $387 billion our government pisses away because we can't seem to get our spending under control, and therefore we keep taking shit out on credit. We're navigating the cyberpunk dystopia. This is the Julien McBain Show. Buckle up. Okay. You'll notice I'm not in my normal suit today. I normally wear a suit, of course, but I'm just wearing a sweater because I've been working outside and it's been chilly. Probably helped if I had my headphones on. I could actually hear something. So, alright. The Festivus report itself outlines $54,746,524,505.37 in wasteful government spending. And there are a couple things that he throws in that I think are frivolous. One of the things that I thought was incredibly frivolous is that there is a $30,000 payment. Let me see if I can just find it real quick, because this one I was just like, this isn't really worth bitching about. Here it is. To put on theatrical plays in Mumbai. This is part of the State Department. It was a program they had. It was $30,000, which, okay, to us, the $30,000 is a lot of money, but when you are the government and you're doing diplomacy, and theater might have a significant cultural aspect to it in Mumbai, I can actually see us spending $30,000, which in government budgets is a drop in the bucket, right? That's pocket change for them, even though it's definitely not pocket change for us. So that we can make sure that we have good treaties with other countries, that we're gaining allies, we're showing, and helping countries with their culture, things like that. Yes, it's money that we don't really need to spend, but at the same time, for the good that can come out of it, especially for negotiating trade, $30,000 in expenditure, if we can get a mere $600,000 in positive trade, the tax dollars alone that come back off of that make it worth the expense. It really does. So honestly, I don't see any reason where that's a problem. And actually, I'm going to take these off. I don't really need to hear the game per se to talk to you, and I don't want to get too loud because I live in a family. So there were some things that I did not put in my list of personal gripes I have, but you might have personal gripes with. I really encourage you to at least look at the list of things so you know what your government's spending money on. There's a few things I want to parse that are in the report and explain where he's coming from. And I had to do some rough math on this, and I figured out I'm pretty sure I figured out how he basically calculated the numbers. He says that the numbers herein are roughly the taxes of 1.4 million taxpayers. And what he means is 1.4 million net taxpayers, because he puts the average taxes paid by a taxpayer at $10,006.55. Now, if you were to take all of the taxes by everyone across the board, you'd have to add them all up and divide them by the total number of taxpayers to come up with that number, which means it's the mean tax bill, not the median tax bill, not the most common tax bill. I apparently have some competition out here. That's fine. It's the mean tax bill. So that's the flat average of all taxes paid by everyone across the board, from the richest to the poorest, all lumped together and then divided by the total number of taxpayers. Keep in mind, there's a large chunk of people in America that don't pay income tax. Oh, they take the tax out. Well, okay, the government takes taxes out of all of us, but there is a large chunk at the bottom of the income spectrum that actually have a net negative income tax. And that is because the way that our structure is set up, it's to make sure that those who don't make enough don't pay in, and in fact get rebates in order to help spur their productiveness. There's actually, CGP Grey kind of goes into it a little bit. I'm going to do a podcast on it at some point, but when he says that the mean taxpayer pays $10,000, no, you're not. You personally are probably not putting $10,000 into the tax base if you're making less than $100,000. What's really happening is that when you average everything together from everyone and divide by the total number of citizens, the net taxpayers, and then control for those who actually receive net income from the government, then that's what the total tax bill is on the individual. Now, keep in mind, this $54.7 billion could pay for 456,221 miles of paved roads. And considering the infrastructure problems we have in our country right now, this is why it upsets me. Now, I do lean libertarian. I am definitely on the more government forgiving side of libertarianism, because although there was a time in my life when I was truly an ANCAP, I figured out that, oh, you know what? Being an ANCAP doesn't always work the way you thought it did. And so while I lean libertarian, I lean heavily libertarian, I do believe that government does have a function, and that taxes, while technically a form of theft in a lot of ways, are a necessary evil with the way we have set things up right now. Now, of course, there are better ways to do things than taxes, and I could go into a whole freaking documentary on how that could be done, but that's outside of the scope of our discussion today. But realistically, the biggest reason we should be upset is because they just had passed a $5,500 bill that no one read. Literally no one read. It was $5,500 page bill. It was an omnibus bill, which means it covers everything. And part of that was the Defense Act, part of that was COVID relief, part of it was a bunch of other little things where they've pissed away $2.3 trillion, and every American citizen was only slated to get $600 in COVID relief. And along with that bill, they sent tens of millions or billions of dollars to other places with no justification. Like, literally. They sent like $10 million to Pakistan, which, you know what? If we want to do foreign aid, I can understand there are reasons to do foreign aid, but not when we can't help ourselves. Okay? We really need to be able, it's like Tim Pool likes using the airplane, the depressurized airplane allegory. You got to put on your own mask before you try to help someone put on theirs. Currently, especially the way a lot of governors are running things, we can talk about the number of constitutional rights that have been trampled all over in the last 10 months. The economy is shit. We destroyed our own economy to get a hold of COVID. At the time that we did it, it made a certain amount of sense. We can go into whether or not it makes sense now at a different time. Fact of the matter is, we don't have an economy right now. We should not be going $2.3 trillion in debt and then shipping half of that money overseas to other people. It does not make sense. We should not be providing $10 million to Pakistan. We should not be providing $500 million to Israel. I'm pro-Israel. I don't want to be providing them aid when we can't help the American people. That is the pure definition of bullshit. So, but that actually doesn't have anything to do with what I'm talking about in this Festivus report. This is just shit we've spent money on in the last year. So let's start talking waste. And I'm sure that I've probably lost quite a few of my normal viewers, and I want to apologize to a certain extent. But this is really part of the reason that I built this podcast, because I want to talk about shit like this. The American government has really decided that we don't matter anymore. That's just the way it is. The aristocracy and the technocracy have really taken things over, and as far as they're concerned, as long as they can throw us just a little bit of a bone, we should be happy with however they rule us. And it's horseshit, and we should all start looking at it and really understanding what's going on around us and stop putting the blinders on. We can't afford to be low information people anymore. You know, this is why I say that we are the torch in the darkness. We have to be the lawless subculture, and I don't mean lawless in the Puritan, the pure sense of anarchic. We don't live in anarchy. We live by principle. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution of the several states, whichever state you live in. For those of you in America, for those of you outside of America, I hope you champion the ideals behind these documents and go to your own governments and demand that they give you the freedoms, because life, liberty, and property are the three rights that all humans are born with. And without those rights, we are slaves. So, we're going to get into waste. This is how they are extracting from the poor and the middle class, and they're just pissing it away. And these are just my favorites. Let's start with the NIH. And I believe this is the National Institute of Health, if I remember correctly. This was under healthcare. I know there are a lot of people who like the idea of public funded healthcare. I have a lot of issues with it. Like from an idealism, I understand, right? I get it. And in a lot of ways, it seems like it would be a good thing. People don't have to worry. They go to the hospital. They're taken care of. Everything's good. Tax dollars pay for it. But here's the problem. In the United States right now, we pay about 160% what most other countries pay for healthcare. However, our speed of service, especially for critical conditions like cancer, is about 400% faster. You go to Canada, yeah, you're going to get free upfront healthcare, free at point of service healthcare, and it's taken out of taxes. But if you've got cancer, you're put on a waiting list. And for some people, that waiting list is long enough to where it goes from something treatable to something terminal. And they do the calculus. They do it in Britain. They had that child that they literally sentenced to death because they felt that he was not worth. They did not want to spend the dollars in trying to save his life. And Italy even said, fine, we'll make him a citizen. Let us have our citizen so we can take care of him. And Britain said no. So these are the reasons that I'm opposed to it. But let's actually talk about what we did spend money on, because I'm tangenting really badly and I apologize. I see all this and all of the stuff just dumps down. So, NIH study to see if you'll eat ground up bugs. They want to know if you'll eat ground up bugs. I mean, there are a lot of cultures that eat bugs. In some places, bugs are the chief source of protein. Yeonmei Park talks about how eating bugs was how they got protein when she lived in North Korea. But sounds kinda dystopic. Oh wait, we spent $1.3 million to find out if you'd be willing to eat ground up bugs. Sounds appetizing, doesn't it? Oh, we'll revisit the whole eating bugs thing later, by the way. Don't worry, because that's just what I think of when I get up in the morning. I want to get up and grab the box of cereal and pour it into my bowl and find out it's mealworms, right? Isn't that what you want for breakfast? $1.3 million to find out if you'd eat that shit. Oh, here's a better one. A study to find out why stress causes gray hair. I'm telling you, reading this report gave me some gray hair. We spent $36.8 million on that. $36.8 million to figure out the cause of gray hair. You know, as a parent, we joke that the cause of gray hair is our children. And realistically, there is some truth to that, but not for the reason that most people would think, nor the reason that our kids would probably feel. The reason that it causes gray hair is because of stress, and we stress because we worry about them. We worry about making sure that they are in good health, that they're fed, that they're clothed, that they've got a roof over their head, that they're attending school every day, that they are happy and well cared for, and that is a form of stress, and that's a good stress. It's why I've always said that parenthood is both the most rewarding and most stressful thing I have ever done. That being said, I don't see why we needed to spend $36.8 million to discover why we get gray hair, or why stress causes gray hair. I mean, it's just the way things... Some of these natural processes, it doesn't need to be funded by a government. You know, we've got medical groups out there. You can raise funds on GoFundMe for something like that. Really? Let's keep going. This one made me mad. Used money that was earmarked for cancer research to create a smart toilet, because obviously that's going to help cancer patients. You know, you've got cancer, here's your smart toilet. Now it'll tell you what the weather is while you take a shit. We spent $6.9 million of cancer research funds on that, government earmarked. Now, keep in mind that a lot of cancer research is done by donations, which I think is awesome. Being a member of the Freemasons, a lot of the money that we raise goes toward various cancer researches. We also, of course, have the burn hospitals, because if you're a Shriner, you are a Freemason. So the fact that we're able to raise so much money through charities for cancer research, and a lot of good has been done through charities for cancer research, makes me really happy. I don't have a problem with the government helping to fund cancer research, because that is a huge issue. Cancer is literally dying of immortality. And I've talked about telomere research and how cancer is caused by out-of-control telomeres, and how if we could get that under control, we might actually figure out this whole mortality thing. It'd be really nice if I could actually target something that wasn't being shot by someone else. But why did they find it necessary to spend money that was earmarked for this research to save people's lives on a toilet? Makes a whole bunch of sense, doesn't it? At least while you're dying, it'll tell you what the weather's like. Maybe you'll be able to search the news. Oh, this one was great. I just don't get this. Gave federal employees duplicative access to Medicare customer service. What? And the best part is, Medicare's customer service sucks to begin with, okay? It literally sucks. It is the only thing worse than Medicare customer service in my experience, which thankfully I haven't had to deal with it very much. I just happen to work in insurance, and so once in a while we have to deal with some of that crap. Medicare customer service. Actually, I don't even do it as an insurance person. I did it when I was a banker. We spent $47 million on giving federal workers redundant access. We could have easily spent that $47 million on, I don't know, hiring more people to give regular people who actually need the Medicare or are on Medicare access to service. $47 million is a shitload of salaries. Like, break it down. If you're paying everyone, I don't know, we'll just call it, for the sake of argument, we'll call it $50,000. But let's break down that number. I'm going to pull out my calculator on my handy dandy personal terminal because it's not really a cell phone anymore. 47, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divided by 50,000. That's 940 extra people at a middling salary, which for government's really baseline. Oh, you know what? No, I'm sorry. I misread that. Let me just double check this real quick. Yes, I did misread that. I misread my notes because my handwriting's atrocious. It's not 47. It's 217 million. 217 million for duplicative access. What else could have that $217 million bought? Trip to Mars? Actually, I'm pretty sure that would pay for a trip to Mars. Oh, and this one upset me the most. The VA, you know, the hospital system that cares for our veterans after they've been to war and fought for our freedoms. Whether you agree with a specific war or not, that's really what they do. The VA is quite possibly the best example of why government-run healthcare is awful. Undelivered orders from the VA. Undelivered. $3.5 billion. That's with a B. Undelivered orders. Now, I don't necessarily know what that means. I do know that the VA is rife with waste and bad management. Honestly, the way we care for our veterans through the multiple systems is just hard to figure out because it requires redundant bureaucracy. We have one system for people who retire out and another system who terminate after 1 or 2 enlistments. With the amount of redundant bureaucracy we have to have, we're burning money for no reasons. If we eliminated the VA and put everyone on TRICARE, which is what active military duty gets, so everyone who is entitled to the VA disappears. You hire the number of people out of the VA into the TRICARE system. TRICARE is literally universal health care for veterans or for military service people. It also has a historically much better service system and doesn't have nearly the problems or the corruption or the nonsense. So I'd say eliminate the VA altogether, put everyone who's entitled to VA service onto TRICARE. And this is someone who doesn't like government-run healthcare, but the VA is honestly probably the best argument against it. Put them on TRICARE, where they actually know what the fuck they're doing, and we'll have half the waste. I guarantee it. Let's keep going. Ah, yes. This one I'm on the fence about. I really am, because I get it. Being on the libertarian side, I really don't like the war on drugs. I'm not big on controlling people's lives, and I see drug use more as a healthcare issue than as a criminal justice issue. We spent $8.6 billion on counter-narcotics efforts in Afghanistan. Now, here's why I am more forgiving for this, even though I think that's a horrendous amount of money. Narcotics are often used as a means to fund terrorism, because it's easy to sell drugs. I mean, that's not hard to figure out. That's why the cartels are doing so well in Mexico. That's why the families are still in New York. It's easy to sell drugs. When you sell drugs, and you can sell them for a really high price because of all the anti-drug laws, therefore there's a black market which sparks an artificial price hike because you can justify paying more when you have such a limited supply and such limited means to get them to the market. And no regulations, which I'm not a big fan of regulations, but let's be facing it, on narcotics, there's definitely some justification there. So the counter-narcotics efforts, while I think, and I know there's an argument to get out of Afghanistan, we're not going to go into that today, and for the most part, I'm on the fence about the whole staying in Afghanistan versus leaving. It's just a horrendous amount of money. And this is one of those things where I cringe at it, but I get it. Because if we don't spend that money on the counter-narcotics efforts, what is the money earned by selling those narcotics going to go? Because it is a business. It is earned money. Just because a business is illegal doesn't mean you don't earn the funds. You just do so in a way that's, well, illegal. This is why you still have to pay taxes on money that you illegally acquire. In fact, that's how they got Al Capone. They didn't get Al Capone on all the criminal shit he did, the fact that he was a murderer or a drug pusher. Or, actually, no, I think he was prohibition. I think he was alcohol. But they got him on tax evasion. You see, if you are the Don of a mafia, right? Let's pretend you're one of the 5 families in New York. And you earn $5 million pushing dope or narcotics of some sort in the streets of New York. You still have to report that income, or else the revenuers come after you. And so what you do is you report it on your taxes, and on the source line you just write the words Fifth Amendment. They can't do shit. I am dead serious. That's how you do it. And in fact, that's the official tax guidance. That's why I'm saying it. I am not encouraging you to do illegal things. Do not do illegal things. Please don't do illegal things. But that's how it's done. And that's why it's hard to prosecute the mafia on tax evasion like they used to, because the mafia got smart and the IRS in their infinite wisdom told them exactly how to report the income. Somebody's palms got greased. Okay, let's keep going before they take my video down for trying to encourage something that I'm really not trying to encourage. This one I don't even understand. Like, why? Why did we spend money on this? What business do we have spending money on this? Why are we putting $37.5 million into dealing with Filipino truancy in the Philippines? What? Like, the Philippines aren't even a U.S. protectorate anymore. They're an independent. They're a sovereign nation. Okay. There was a time when they were part of the I guess they're technically part of the hegemony still in a lot of ways, but they're sovereign. They do their own thing now. They're not under U.S. government control. Shouldn't they be paying to deal with their own truancy issues? $37.5 million has to go toward that. This one I found highly ironic. I almost laughed at this, especially in light of 2020. We spent $10 million monitoring Zimbabwe elections. Why are we monitoring Zimbabwe elections? Now, if it's part of a UN mandate, because Zimbabwe has not always had the most free and fair election system, and this is our portion to the UN, I can understand the reason we put the money out. But if it's just us throwing money at it, and a lot of this, I'll admit, I did not read the whole 150-page report yet. It's on my list of things to do. I got the report the day before Christmas. I take Christmas off on purpose. But I looked down the list and I had to talk about it. And I am more than willing to revisit this. And if someone wants to go through the report and fact check me and just like comment the hell out of this video bitching at me about it, go for it. This one also boggled my mind. And this one I understand, but I'm going to go into my criticism of this one a little bit more nuanced. We spent $48 million helping disconnected Tunisian youth not feel like a problem. Now, when it comes to kids, I have a real soft spot. Because I know that our children right now, the Zoomers, the younger millennials, a lot of them are turning into adults and they don't have any They don't have any meaning in their lives. They don't feel like they're doing anything meaningful. And in a lot of ways, especially this year, and part of that's COVID for this year, but even before then, because the life has become so almost too easy. The amount of technology we have, the lack of challenge, because that's how we really find meaning, is in the challenges that we face in life. And so I can totally understand where if there is an area where a bunch of youth are having problems, we want to donate to that cause and help those youth find that meaning and not feel like that they're a problem just for existing. That being said, I'm going to fall back on the whole, we need to clean our own room before we start looking at other people's. Put your own mask on. In America today, there are a lot of disaffected youth. There are a lot of youth who feel like they're a problem. We have record levels of depression. We have record levels of suicide. We have horrendous mental health issues. And most of them have come up in the last 2 generations, the millennials and the Zoomers. And part of the primary reason behind that is actually the very technology that we have so wonderfully have access to now. Because things that prevent depression are things like having to move around and do physical labor. Believe it or not. As tiring as it is, as tedious as it is, I feel more motivated after spending 2 hours splitting wood than I do after 2 hours playing most video games. And I say that as a gamer. I mean, I'm a gamer. I have a whole channel that's been dedicated to gaming up until this podcast, and now I'm kind of doing both. But because moving around is part of how we keep ourselves going. And so now we've got 2 generations that are largely sedentary. A lot of them were raised on, especially the millennials, where we spent a lot of our time in front of a television. And for previous generations, TV was a treat you got at the end of the day. Like Gen Xers, they got home and they watched Flipper and Happy Days. Speaking of which, I saw an episode of Happy Days the other day. I'm like, holy shit. But we need to look to ourselves and make sure we're being taken care of before we help other people. And I would expect people of other countries to do the same. I don't expect Japan to help us with an issue if Japan is struggling with the issue. I would expect them to focus inward and put their money into their own people. And when their people are in good shape, then to expand out. Same with us. If we're in rough shape, why are we expending on others? And I'm not saying that to be rude. It's just like, I can't buy another person a meal if I don't have the money to eat myself. Now, I do them no good by giving them the only piece of bread. Now, maybe I can split it, or maybe I can get together with a bunch of other people who are hard up, and maybe we can all chip in 10 cents. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can do. But $48 million, when we really need the $48 million here to help our disaffected youth, this is where it's one of those things. It's a catch-22. Both groups need the help. But the thing is if we can help our own youth be less disaffected, we can leverage that productivity to increase the amount of money that's flowing, and then we can look at doing something like this. That makes a whole lot more sense. Because that's how democracies and republics really get their power. They leverage the productivity of their people. And disaffected youth aren't productive. And this is why I think we see the rise of a lot of... There's been a huge uptick in people who support socialism, because they don't understand that stuff has to come from somewhere. And it depends on the type, that like democratic socialism versus like Soviet socialism. That top-down structure, because inevitably someone has to direct the ship. It doesn't work as well as a free people deciding what to produce. And this was proven in the Soviet Union. It's been proven in China. They had to liberalize their economy. Even though the government of China owns the companies, the actual people who run the companies often choose what they do in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, that's a whole complicated issue. But what it comes down to is, and I'm tangenting, what it comes down to is, if we can help our own disaffected youth, they become more productive. We can then use the fruits of that production to help the disaffected youth in other countries. Because when it comes to kids, I do have a soft spot, so I kind of get it. But at the same time, we got to clean up our own room first, guys. We really do. We can't allow... Oh, that one's unreachable figures. Oh, and he's still... Oh, that's great. We can't allow that desire to help override the fact that we're leaving our own people behind. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. This one's an irritation, because there are going to be people who really give me a funny look when I say this, but the federal government should not be spending $129.9 million on buses for localities. I get public transit. Public transit gives a lot of benefit to people who are in the lower income brackets. I've lived in a place with reasonably good public transit. I have benefited from public transit. So I am not saying that public transit bad, although again, I would stand by the idea that usually the government's the worst possible option for providing anything. Here's the thing though. Public transit should be funded by the locality and or the state. That is why we have states. The thing is that we are, and this is going to be a whole podcast, and I'm going to be doing it in the very near future because I need to make sure this is out there for people to reference. The United States is not a single country. We're a federation. We're a federation of 50 essential, internally sovereign states. And what that means is the internally sovereign, they rule themselves and are not influenced directly by other states within the Union. The federal government exists to handle a certain number of things, and that's literally it. It is not the federal government's purview to handle local public transportation issues. Now, if they wanted to fund a program for interstate travel on like a public version of Greyhound, I have arguments against that too, but at least that makes sense. That's actually within federal purview because it involves interstate travel. But the federal government should not be funding something that should be funded by local tax dollars or even state tax dollars. I live in Vermont, which has its own issues, but it's a state that has a lot of public services. In fact, for a lot of states, we're considered the gold standard of providing public services, even though we really can't afford to provide those public services. If a state wants to invest in putting public transit into their cities or into their towns to make sure people can get back and forth, that is their prerogative. It is not within the purview of the federal government to do that. Those tax dollars could go elsewhere. Or at the very least, they could just never take them from the states to begin with so that those tax dollars could be better spent. And it could be that it's spent on buses. But there's no reason that, say, California should be subsidizing a bus line in New Mexico. Just as an example. This one bothered me. And it's a low dollar amount, relatively speaking. It's just under $200,000. It's really one of those TV special 1995 type things. It's less than $20. No, this is basically $200,000. We spent $200,000 on a study to see how New York City residents abided by lockdowns from COVID-19. We literally spent $200,000 on a study to find out just how unconstitutionally they could push orders before people would revolt. Because that's what those orders are. Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio have been literally pushing martial law in New York City. I mean, if you look at the definition of martial law, that's what New York City's been under. People aren't allowed out of their homes. Essentially, you have to have your papers in some cases. They were checking licenses at the border. So, what? It's like, we're going to instill martial law, and then we're going to spend almost $250,000 to find out just how people live under martial law. Guess what? They get pissed off. I could have told you that one. Pay me the $200,000 to say that. No, don't give me $200,000 to say that. Okay. The next one is excesses in military spending. And this particular one made me upset because, of course, I have close ties to the military. I have friends who have been in the military. I have seen a lot of their... I've experienced a lot of their equipment, even though not necessarily in the traditional way. The M2 and M3 Bradley. It's an infantry and cavalry fighting vehicle, depending on the configuration. It's basically it's a mobile weapon. It looks like a tank. And I'll go by the infantry version for the most part. It's an infantry fighting vehicle or cavalry fighting vehicle. Basically what it is it's a light, fast weapon. It has an auto cannon. I believe it's 40 millimeter, but fact check me on this. And it has a tow missile launcher that carries, last I checked, 2 tow missiles. And it's gone through various updates and upgrades over the time. But we use that as an infantry fighting vehicle, so it carries troops along with the weapons and can be used as a platform. For Warhammer 40k players, think a Chimera or a Razorback. A Chimera, excuse me, it's a Chimera. I always mispronounce that word. Or a Razorback. That's basically the idea behind the Bradley. And its ubiquity is so much that it's like the A10. It's hard to replace. It really is. Because what it does so well. I mean, we have the Striker now, which arguably could be used to replace the Bradley, but because of what the Bradley's specific missions are, it's not a great replacement. I mean, when you have a tracked weapon versus a wheeled weapon, the tracked weapon can go more places, even if the wheeled weapon has 8 wheels. It doesn't compare. There are some places wheels just can't travel. But that didn't stop us from spending, survey says, $23.9 billion in trying to replace it. And guess what, kids? We failed. I understand that there's a military-industrial complex in America, and we've had presidents admit to this military-industrial complex, so I can say it. I have no problem saying those words unironically. And I know that there are going to be a lot of tinfoil hat types that are going, yes, the military... No, not that type of military-industrial complex. I mean, literally a military-industrial complex where there are companies out there that make all of their money off the military and rely upon military spending in order to make their budgets. And that's a thing. Boeing is a great example, thanks to the Lightning. I think was it Boeing or Lockheed that one? No, I think that one was Lockheed Martin. Who won the F-30? Who did the F-35? Hang on. F-35. Google. Lockheed Martin did that. I'm sorry, Boeing. I threw you under the bus. I apologize. Lockheed Martin, who has been one of the biggest manufacturers of weapons ever. Most of their budget is pretty much in weapons sales. It's just a fact. Now, I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that. Militaries need weapons. But part of how they get that money is by researching and developing new weapons. And to do that, you basically have to force obsolescence in old weapons. However, there are a couple of weapons that are perfect. One of those weapons is the M2 and M3 Bradley. In its design, it is functionally perfect for what it does. It's a light scouting vehicle that can also carry troops. Very few vehicles can match up to something that's tracked to do that and it can go everywhere, and I believe it even floats. Fact check me on that. You know what? I can look that up too. I'll fact check myself here on camera. M2 Bradley fighting vehicle. Do you float? Armament counter check. It's a 25 millimeter chain gun. Now, okay, I thought it was a 40 millimeter autocannon, but it's a 25 millimeter chain gun, which is just as functional. It works. It works real well. Torsion bars, I don't care. Mobility. Wait a second. Mobility. Highly capable in cross-country open terrain in accordance with the main design objectives to keep pace. It was designed to keep up with the M1 Abrams, which it does fantastically. I actually think it's faster than the M1. Oh, it cannot float. They actually designed it to float with a flotation curtain, and that kind of failed. And since they've had to up armor them, that capability's gone away. So it doesn't float. So I was wrong there. So I fact checked myself. I was incorrect. But it was designed to keep up with the M1 Abrams in combat. and protect infantrymen and cavalry soldiers while doing so. Kind of hard to beat. So, and we spent so much money. We've done the same thing with the A-10 Thunderbolt. The A-10 Thunderbolt is a flying gun. It's purpose-built. It was purpose-built to do one mission, to take out tanks. And there isn't a single weapon in our arsenal that can do a better job, bar none. No. Spectre. The Spectre can do a... I can't believe that I let myself die. The Spectre can do about as good a job. And for those of you who don't know, the Spectre is a C-130. It's an AC-130 that has a bunch of guns along the left side, including a 105 millimeter howitzer. And they circle around a target and just fire guns at it until the target's been obliterated or they run out of ammo. No. But when it comes to single point target, the A-10 is perfect. And having flown around A-10s, like literally in the air with an A-10 in the airspace with me, they are frighteningly fast, maneuverable. And so I went to school for aviation, for those of you who don't know. A couple of the A-10 pilots in a nearby airbase were graduates from my college, Daniel Webster. So they loved to visit us. And they were known for doing flyovers of the college with the airport's permission, because their college was on the airport, because it was a flight college. And we had a saying at the college, and the saying was, if you can hear the A-10, you're safe. Because that A-10 will hit you before you can hear their engine noise. You don't hear an A-10 before it kills you. If you can hear the A-10, you're beyond where they normally target. So you're safe, at least on that particular flyby. And we spent billions of dollars trying to replace it, and guess what? You can't replace perfection. That's a whole conversation for later. This dude. So, off of that tangent, let's move into, a bungled drone base in Nigeria. We spent $110 million on that. Can I ask, like, a philosophical question? Why are there U.S. military assets in Nigeria? I mean, are we part of a peacekeeping mission there? I don't recall there being any form of declared war in Nigeria. You'd think that'd be on the news. But we decided to spend $110 million on a drone base there. Was that for their government? Was that for us? And from what I understand, that was the Army Corps of Engineers that burned that money. I kind of want to know. You know what I mean? It's like, wait, what do you mean we've got troops in Nigeria? Which we do have troops in Nigeria. From what I understand, they are fighting that child soldier group. They're trying to get the children freed from that child soldier group. They're basically slaves that have been handed guns and told to go fight or die. So if that's the case, if we're going to end child soldiering by taking out the adult leaders who abuse these children, you know what? Fair enough. I do think that transparency thing's kind of important. Lost equipment for Syrians battling ISIS. And it did not say, like, destroyed equipment, because that kind of comes with war. No, lost. Like, someone lost it. It's missing. $715.8 million. And missing equipment in Syria. What? And I mean, the worst part is, there's a solid chance it was stolen by the very people who we sent it there to fight. This one made me angry. And it should make you angry. They repurposed COVID funds for unrelated acquisitions. This is the Department of Defense. And to the tune of $1 billion. I'm going to repeat that. The Department of Defense repurposed COVID funds that were given the Department of Defense specifically to deal with COVID, because our military is kind of important, to the tune of $1 billion. I hope whoever's responsible for that gets Article 15. No. Is it 15? I don't remember the article. I want them court-martialed. I want them court-martialed. Up before a military tribunal, what the fuck were you thinking? Because someone's responsible for that. And I don't care if it's the secretary of whichever armed service it was that lost it. Maybe it's the Secretary of Defense or one of his undersecretaries. Whoever was responsible for that needs to be put on trial. If they're military, put them in front of a tribunal. If they are civilian, I want them in front of a federal court. That is wholly unacceptable. This all falls under, from here on, it fell under this one fell under miscellaneous. There are two more that I wanted to get into that just, they made me chuckle when I read them. They really did. This one didn't. We paid $20 million to rebuild a taxiway for an airport in Nantucket in federal money, which is almost exclusively used by private planes that a whole bunch of rich folks use. Now, I'm not one of those, well, the rich need to not get anything. Well, when it comes to federal spending, we should not be spending it on people who could just as easily fund it locally because of the amount of money they make. It could all be paid for in local taxes. The Fed doesn't have to be paying for that. That's why we have municipal and state taxes to pay for shit like this. Now, I wonder why they put a bunch of federal funds toward Nantucket. Could it be that I'm pretty sure there are quite a few people in our federal government who have second homes in Nantucket? Nah, that couldn't be it. Okay. Couple of frivolities. This one made me chuckle, just in its stupidity. I'm scratching my head as to why we spent $1.6 million on this. I really am. I mean, if we weren't in so much debt, this would be hilarious. Like if we were flush and there was no government debt and we just had extra money to throw at shit, this wouldn't even bother me. I just find it hilarious. We spent $1.6 million to walk lizards on a treadmill. I shit you not, that's the line item in the report. I mean, okay. I guess the bearded dragons need their exercise. I mean, I kind of want to know more about this. Like, why were we walking lizards on a treadmill? Is it to find out if a bearded dragon go a further distance than a Komodo dragon? I don't know. Maybe we were seeing if they taste better if they've been on a run before we slaughter them. Or maybe we see how many extra bugs they eat. Because why the fuck not, right? I saw that and I was just like, okay. Oh. And we spent $200,000. This one boggled my mind. And as a gamer, this one's important. Because one, part of me is like, good, the federal government is starting to recognize the importance of video games to the culture. They're not just trying to blame it for all the evils of the culture like they did 20 years ago, which, by the way, pissed me the fuck off even as a child. Our federal government spent $200,000, which I know is not a lot of money, technically, broadly speaking in the context, to find out how esports build teamwork. Now, I can see where that could be of benefit, but I've got a better plan for this one, and this is where I say I think the government is the absolute worst way to solve any problem. See, if the government wanted to do a study on esports and how it builds teamwork, they could have done something very simple. Now, we've got a couple of really big companies who use esports to really drive their product sales. I'm going to use Activision Blizzard as an example. I have a lot of problems with Activision Blizzard, but I grew up with Activision Blizzard. They have been historically one of my favorite companies ever. I do think that there have been a lot of problems. I think that's why a lot of their founders have started to go their own way. I find that to be very sad. And I think a good chunk of it is being directed by Activision and not Blizzard itself. But that's a whole nother story for another time. They could have gone up to one of these companies who have an esports type product, like Blizzard with World of Warcraft, with Call of Duty, They could have gone to EA with Battlefield, although EA probably would not have done a very good job because EA kind of sucks. And just gone, hey, we want you to put $200,000 of your money into this study. Do the study, allow our people to come in. You're going to pay them. They're going to do the study. They come up with this comprehensive report. Or however many dollars. Don't even give them a budget. Just say, spend money on this report. And for every dollar that you spend on this report, we will give you $5 in tax breaks. Works for both of them. Because, there's a lot of people with them, we would lose $500,000. No. That's not how it works. Or I should say $1 million, because 200,000 times 5 is $1 million. That's not how it works. See, the way a tax break works is, if you give someone a $10 million tax break, right? You're not giving them $10 million, or you're not taking $10 million from them. A $10 million tax break, depending on the context, because it depends on how how it's written up, right? It could mean either one, but generally speaking, a $10 million tax break means that when reporting taxable income, they reduce that amount by $10 million, or by $1 million in this case. So instead of, let's say they make $100 million, right? And we've said, okay, if you spend this money on this report, we'll let you take a 5 times tax break. Like for every dollar you spend, you can take $5 off your taxable income. If I have $100 million in taxable income and I spend $200,000 and it's 5 to 1, I'm taking $1 million off of my taxable income for the year. That's tax protected, so I don't have to pay taxes on it, but I still have to pay on the other 99. And keep in mind that the tax rate on that amount is only about 20%. So, well, look, instead of giving $200,000 to the government, I spent $200,000 on a program that helps to prove the usefulness of my product in a general context, and more importantly, gives me really good press because I can say I did the study and funded it. Win-win. Actually, win-win-win. Because then it's not being spent in tax dollars. Then the company gets good press, which drives sales, which of course generates more tax dollars in the form of sales tax. It benefits everyone because we understand video games better, which this is a medium that our government's very reluctant to even say is more than just a toy, even though we have definitive proof it has all kinds of different aspects to it. So, and I told you I'd get back into the bugs thing. And I honestly forgotten about this at first. And so I need to find it because it was a little bit deeper in. Hang on. Bugs. Where'd the bugs go? Oh, here's a fun one. We spent $4.5 million to spray alcoholic rats with bobcat urine. I really don't understand the purpose in that, but whatever. I mean, we've pissed away money on other stupid shit. We spent $16.5 billion on allowing states to take advantage of TANF rules, which I think that's temporary assistance for needy families, and I believe that temporary assistance to needy families is really, really important. But I want to know where those dollars went to. Like, were they direct payments to families? I highly doubt it. If it was money spent given directly to people who need it, I mean, okay, $16.5 billion is a shitload of money, but okay, fine, fair enough. I think with that much money, we could probably solve hunger, like forever. But from a realistic standpoint, in all likelihood, most of it went to bureaucracy. Because for every dollar that a family gets, we're spending 5 in bureaucracy. And that's pretty much the long and the short of it. And I've got a whole rant about that. We're not doing that tonight. But I want to find the other half of the bugs thing. We spent $10 million to buy COVID test tubes. Turned out they were unusable soda bottles. Someone fucked that up. I hope someone got fired for that. Bugs. Here it is. Subsidizes an insect ranching company's R&D efforts. $1.3 million. Because that makes sense. Oh. So, Okay. If you have made it this far with me, I appreciate it. I really do. Because this has been nuts. And with this whole $2.3 trillion COVID relief bill, I just can't. I can't. It got vetoed. There's going to be some restructuring. My hope is that it's a clean bill. I really don't think that's going to happen. We really need to force our government to rein in its spending. We really do. Because it's not going to get any better. If we don't hold our senators and representatives to account and make sure that they're doing their jobs properly, they're just going to keep frittering away taxpayer funds. And I don't know when this will get better. I don't know if it'll get better. It could take time. And one of the things we need to look at is if they aren't accountable to us, who are they accountable to? Might be time to make sure there aren't any incumbents left. Now, there are people pushing back. Rand Paul is one of them. I think having his voice there is very, very important. Only a handful of people voted against the waste. And I'm not saying that there aren't important things in there. There are absolutely important things. The problem is that they're using the important things to force through spending on things that don't matter. Or they shouldn't matter at this time because there are more important things to be considered. Every dollar we spend that increases our debt is money that we need to somehow pay back in the future. We're currently at somewhere around $27 trillion in federal debt. That's more than any of us earn. That's I believe more than 30. That is more than 30,000 per person. I think it's more than 50,000 per person across the United States. You know what? Let me check. I'm going to fact check myself here on camera. U.S. debt clock. USDebtClock.org traces this practically in real time. So the debt per citizen as of right now is $83,217. It's per citizen. That's every man, woman, and child in the country. And no, I'm not excluding people of non-binary. I'm not deliberately excluding anyone by saying that. It's an old-fashioned saying, and I know we got to come up with it. Every person in the country. $83,217. It's $220,130 per taxpayer. Keep in mind, children don't pay taxes, and there are a lot of people in the lowest income brackets that effectively don't pay taxes either. Something has to be done. I don't know what it is. But unless we hold our lawmakers accountable and let them know that if they don't do what they should be doing, we're going to throw them out of office, it's never going to get better. All right, that's all I got. I appreciate everyone coming. There's so much going on. I'm going to continue holding a torch in the darkness. We have to stop the extraction of wealth from the working class and the middle class that's been happening for the last year. We had a booming economy. COVID shut the whole thing down. We have to let our lawmakers know that we see what they're doing, that we see where this is going. Hold up a torch in the darkness, because we're navigating the cyberpunk dystopia. This is the Julien McBain Show. Julien McBain Show is a McBain Manor production. Thank you to my moderators, Kat, Jay Lambertson, and Captain Aubrey, and to my patrons, Red Kryptonite, Jay Lambertson, and Spectrum 3600, without whose support I would not be able to do these videos as easily. Thank you so much. We will see you in the next one.